Hello, and a very warm welcome to this Business versus Loneliness webinar. I'm Nick Gulliver from the Economics of Mutuality Alliance, and I'm delighted you could join us today. We're here to explore a big question, and I'd suggest a big opportunity. What role can consumer goods companies play in tackling loneliness? Loneliness affects mental and physical health, erodes trust, and fragments communities. And while it's often treated as a personal or public sector issue, the truth is that business has both the responsibility and the tools to be part of the solution. In our Business versus Loneliness report, we shared a thought-provoking insight that came from the research we conducted with the University of Manchester, which was funded by Mars. A finding that is of particular relevance to business leaders from the consumer goods industry. We surveyed 10,000 people across 5 countries and found that while 45% of individuals reported experiencing intimate loneliness, a perceived lack of close, meaningful relationships, a much higher 60% reported feeling relational or collective loneliness. That tells us the most common forms of loneliness aren't about intimacy, they're about belonging. That might come as a surprise. It's often assumed that loneliness primarily stems from not having a close friend, family member, or partner. But in reality, it's also about lacking everyday social interaction or feeling disconnected from a group or community. And that's where the opportunity lies for brands. These are precisely the kinds of connection points that consumer goods companies are uniquely positioned to influence through the experiences they create and the narratives they shape. Brands are in people's homes, routines, and identities every single day. They aren't just bought, they're trusted, shared, and experienced. That means companies in this sector have something powerful: reach, relevance, and the ability to help people feel connected in ways that truly matter. And it's not just about their customers and communities, it's also about their workforce. Inside organizations, loneliness affects well-being, performance, retention, and culture. It shapes how we show up at work and how connected we feel to the teams and missions we're part of. To start the session, we'll hear from my colleague Pascal, who will briefly walk you through our Loneliness Change Compass, an innovative framework we have developed to help businesses tackle the problem. Then Pascal will moderate a conversation with 2 pioneering business leaders, Angela Mangiapane and Madeleine Roche, alongside Pamela Qualter, a leading expert on loneliness from the University of Manchester. Over to you, Pascal.
Thanks, Nick, for that intro, and well said. So in the next 8 minutes, I want to give you guys a bit of a run through of what we uncovered in our research. And loneliness is really this feeling that we all know so well, right? We all experiencing it. I certainly do. And that's okay. It's a natural mechanism we all have to readjust our behaviors and act in a healthy way. What's not okay, though, is to get stuck in that feeling. And then when you get stuck, all these things that you hear about in the news that are associated with loneliness, that the kind of bad things, the economic impact, that results from getting stuck in that feeling. And to help you business leaders, help other people not to get stuck in loneliness, we have ran one of the largest studies in the field. And to give you guys a bit of a perspective here, let's rewind a bit. When we embarked on this journey 3 years ago, much of the conversation was around loneliness as an individual challenge. There's something wrong with you if you are lonely. It's something connected, to health. There's something wrong with you. And this was really kind of displayed also in the public conversation around it. It was really portrayed as this individual failure, right? Like the Atlantic would title, the choices that create isolations, or the loneliness epidemic, or, there are 10 things you can do today to overcome loneliness and get out of it. So all in all, the conversation really focused on 2 things. Number one, loneliness is an individual's problem. And number two, you just need to connect with others. Get out of your seat, get out of your home, connect with others, fix it. But then, when we looked at the data, we found something else. Yes, we also found those people that actually, they really could benefit from, interventions that tackle loneliness as this individual's challenge. But then we found that spaces, online and offline spaces, the way environments are designed, are actually quite massively influencing the extent to which people could live up to their intrinsic coping mechanism to overcome loneliness and not get stuck. And furthermore, we also found that there's actually a second dimension to look at, and that's the notion of positive alone time. Many people we found, to overcome loneliness, their preferred coping strategy is to spend positive time alone. And so we changed the framework. And I know this is a little bit counterintuitive. It's a bit like, how is it like an intervention strategy or a coping mechanism, to spend positive time alone? But think about it. Loneliness and solitude are not the same. How many times have you felt lonely when you were surrounded by others? Right? So at this point, we had identified kind of 4 coping strategies through our analysis of the data. And so we thought, all right, if everyone would like live according to these coping strategies, we would have a world without loneliness. We would have a world with belonging. So we started to wonder, like, what's happening here? Why is it not the case? And we identified a couple of barriers here. And at Mutual Value Labs in our work, we see barriers as opportunities. For you, for everyone here in the room, really overcoming these barriers can help to unlock better society. And we have used this kind of framework, the 2x2 matrix, to map 4 different ways that your companies can take action right away. So in this top left quadrant, for example, we would hear people say something like, every time I open up, I get rejected. People are just so self-focused and don't see me. People don't want to be my friend. Okay, this is the group that actually would benefit from empowerment for social connections. Think, for example, about a training in how to overcome feelings of rejections from social interactions. So this is a bit the kind of traditional camp of how loneliness should be tackled. But then there's also, this top right quadrant here. And here people would say something like, I don't feel comfortable going to our local bar anymore. The way the room was redesigned makes you feel that everyone can see you while you can't see others in the dark. It's around offering spaces for social connection. So think about, for example, board games at a local pub to bring different people together that typically wouldn't talk to each other. Or think about, for example, community gardening initiatives. And then here in the bottom right of the compass, we have a really interesting kind of space. Maybe for me personally, one of the most interesting ones. We would hear people say something like, in a restaurant, I would feel strange that everyone is accompanied and I'm alone. I don't know if I would dare. Like I would feel stigmatized in a way. This is all around offering spaces for positive alone time. And we'll hear later Professor Qualter talk about weak ties and how important it is also to appreciate those. So think here, for example, about those small round tables at Starbucks. They are so small that you don't really know whether a person intentionally sits there alone or whether they are waiting for someone else. So by designing the space in this way, Starbucks destigmatizes this third space, allowing people to sit alone comfortably. And then lastly, here in the bottom left of the quadrant, the compass, we would hear people say something like, I would like to go to the forest, but I think going there is a bit dangerous for a woman. This is about empowering individuals for positive alone time. And think about here, for example, as an intervention, a map in a city that highlights what trails are safe to walk at night. for example. So all in all, with these kind of like 4 intervention areas, which we have lined out in detail in the report, which is free to download at eam.org/loneliness, we provide leaders a step-by-step guide to take action and make society a better place. And for me, this is really a call to action for business. Because think about it, as long as loneliness was kind of framed in this individual health way, like something is wrong with you, you need to fix yourself, it was not really a space where business had an agency to act. But now that we understand the relevance of space, online and offline spaces, actually there's a massive kind of argument that business really should act, can act, and has an opportunity to act here. And then this notion of positive alone time, it really strikes me when I think about all the brand leaders here in the room. Because brands shape pop culture, and this notion that, alone time is not as valued as time with other people, that really needs to change. And here brands can step up to change the narrative. So all in all, I would say there is no room to hide. Leaders here in the room, go out and act. And I'm really pleased that we have 3 amazing leaders in the room today with us on this panel, which we are now having the pleasure to host here, that do not hide, that are in fact trailblazers in their field. And yes, I would love to welcome to the virtual stage Professor Pamela Walter, who bridges academia to action, Angela Mangiapane, who is like one of the top leaders at Mars Inc., and Madeline Roche, who will talk about how a brand can take action in the ecosystem it operates in, speaking for Nivea Biosturf. And I'll introduce them in more detail with like more like appreciation for each individual's CV once by one as we go along. And I would like to start this conversation actually with you, dear Pam, Professor Pamela Quarter, if that's all right. And kind of just to share a bit here about what brought you here. You're one of the world's leading scientific experts when it comes to loneliness. I think you've published over 100 papers on the issue.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the most cited, quoted experts in the field. And you are the co-chair of the WHO Technical Advisory Group to the Commission on Social Connection. So I think it's fair to say that you're a bit of an institution when it comes to loneliness. And most importantly, you have been our ally, our friend, I would say, like in shaping this research and bringing it to the world. So having heard, this kind of like read up in 6 minutes, what we have uncovered, Pam, what does it mean for you? Like, what needs to be done? In what way should businesses take action?
Well, can I say first of all about how great I think the Change Compass is? It changes the way we think about loneliness for a start. So for a long time, we talked about loneliness as being about intimate relationships, about having a close friend, having a close, having a partner. And actually, whilst we were doing the research to understand that those weak ties were important, those everyday hellos, how important those were, your data expands that massively because of the number of people that you had in the survey. And to actually see that so many people use as a way to overcome loneliness just going out and being with people, that changes the way we think about the interventions that we design. So for me, that is a big thing that actually has impacted the research field. And got us thinking about different interventions. But I think also those bottom quadrants, those are really important too, because they're telling us that global narrative about what loneliness is needs to change. Yeah, we need to start seeing alone time more positively and actually offer opportunities to do that safely. So I want to say thank you, as I say, for that. And I do think businesses really can get involved in lots of those quadrants in a way that we can't as psychologists. As psychologists, you're right, that top left-hand corner, that's where we've traditionally done the interventions. And we can do that and continue to do that very well by offering social skills training, emotional training, psychological therapy. And that can be online as well as offline. But the other things I think businesses can really help us with. And that's exciting because it's everybody coming together to really start to change something and make people's lives so much better.
Yeah. Thanks, Pam. Like in our kind of conversations, Pam, we talked about also this notion of weak ties, and I remember you mentioned this notion of the chatty checkout counters. Like,
Yeah.
tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, well, I think we all have experienced now the fact that in many supermarkets, it's a case of you having, the you're self-serving. Um, and what about those nice little conversations that we all used to have? Just a simple hello, how are you? Just wonderful. And we're missing that. Now, I know that some supermarkets have reintroduced the checkout so people can have those continuous chats. They still offer the self-service if you want to be quick, but having those simple conversations is just wonderful, just feeling part of the human race. You can't underestimate those simple communications.
Uh, so powerful, and we really see how supermarkets are strategically deploying this kind of investment to step up and be a local leader in the communities to differentiate themselves from others. Yeah, super powerful. Angela, Mangiapane, also such a pleasure to have you here with us. You are the president, or now it says former president of Mars Global Services, having been with the company for over 30 years. You are just, as you call it, transitioning out to rewirement after a long and successful career with the company. You're a trailblazer. You have held leadership positions in general management, HR, and finance. And you are truly, for me, a role model also when it comes to sharing and showcasing female leadership in a global business environment. And you are really have received a lot of accolades for that. And also, you serve on the board of our company, Mutual Value Labs, which
Yeah.
we're really thankful for your strategic guidance. And yeah, you have been following our journey on this topic as a board member, but also it's a topic that's very dear to the heart of Mars. So maybe you could share a little bit about how did Mars get started in, taking action around social connection and tackling loneliness.
Yep. Sure. Thank you very much, Pascal. And Pam, I can totally quit with the chatty checkout because I will actually wait in line so I can go and talk to the local cashier who I know quite well. So it totally can relate. So good afternoon, everyone, and greetings from New Jersey. I think Jane I saw in the chat is from New Jersey, so a shout out to her. Pascal, your question around, how Mars or why Mars got involved with this. I'd like to do it from two angles. The first angle is the fact that EOM Alliance actually started in Mars. It was a think tank, and probably over 20 years ago now. And John Mars in 2007 asked this great question, which is, what's the right level of profit? Which was quite groundbreaking because he went beyond saying it's just about maximizing shareholder interest. And at that time, it was the two brothers and the sister. So you say, okay, let's maximize their wealth. And that was not the case at all with him because he recognized that we have an impact that we make from a human capital perspective, a social capital perspective, as well as natural capital perspective. And so that really stemmed this economics and mutuality, which over the years has allowed Mars to ask some pretty provocative questions And then stemming in 2019 when it spun off to have it be its own entity, I think some of the provocations continued, and especially after COVID, where this realization that even though we were all connected through many Teams and Zoom calls, why weren't people feeling that sense of belonging? And yes, we would have little wine and cheese Zoom calls, but we needed to do something more. People needed something more to believe. So this was a question that we asked. And I think the journey started, what, 3 years ago, Pascal, if I'm not mistaken, right? That we embarked on this to try to understand, and with the support of Professor Pamela, that it's been quite phenomenal to see the depth in which this study has gone through. But the other angle I also want to do is provide some context about Mars, in that if you know Mars, you wouldn't be surprised that it asks this question, because just to provide context, Mars is a big business. It's a $55 billion business, 145,000 employees who we call associates. And we've always felt that we're actually supporting 145,000 families. And as a result, everything all stems through people. So yes, we have great brands, Snickers, M&Ms, Pedigree, Royal Canin. But what ties it all together is this connection of people. And we are really grounded by it in two areas. One is our Mars purpose. The world we want tomorrow does start with how we do business today. And that business needs to be a force for good, that we can't leave it to government. We can't leave it to NGOs to figure out, society's problems. Business does have a responsibility. And we really believe that is the case. And so the second part of it, we live our five principles. Now, our five principles, many people say, well, okay, I get it. Five principles. You have quality as a principle, efficiency, responsibility. Okay, yeah, what's the big deal? We even have a freedom principle, which really means we want to be private so we can invest in the long term. But the one that really stands out for me is our mutuality principle. A shared benefit is an enduring benefit. And this mutuality principle means we just don't look at the 145,000 families. We look across at, yes, our consumers, but we also look at our third-party partners. And so, for example, in my space that I had, which was, managing global business services, I didn't just look at the 3,000 associates who worked in MGS. I didn't look at the 145,000 associates that we serve. I also looked at the 10,000 individuals that were in our third-party partners, and how did we actually help that? So for us, it was really important that everything we do always stems with common purpose, this feeling of belonging, that we're doing something bigger than ourselves, and that it goes across, not just within the Mars walls. If anything, they're porous and they extend beyond.
Super powerful to see how this purpose, the world we want tomorrow, starts with the way we do business today, then kind of like almost like serves as a let's say compass or navigation system, where the other elements that you mentioned trickle down from. Let's
That's
dive
right.
about and talk about that later. First and foremost now, Madeline. Thank you also for being with us. Madeline Rush, you are the Global Impact Lead at Nivea, a multi-billion-dollar care brand at Bayersdorf. And you look at a career in global business. You have worked for Adidas in Portland before, I believe. So, kind of really a global career now based in Hamburg, Germany. And what you have created at Nivea is quite unique. And you will, of course, share the story yourself, but it really inspires us here at Mutual Value Labs every day. How within 3 years you have built such a platform for change with initiatives all over the world. And personally, I'm quite thankful as well that you are one of our ambassadors when it comes to this platforms, with a particular eye on how Gen Z is also a need hotspot, as we say, when it comes to loneliness. So, also the question to you, Madeline, how did Nivea start to get engaged on this topic? And maybe you could share a little bit about your journey, which I know your personal journey and the brand's journey are quite connected here.
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you so much for bringing us all together and creating these platforms, which I think is just a great opportunity to really get going on that topic and bring it into conversations. So maybe I'll tell a bit of the story of how Nivea ended up with the topic around loneliness and isolation, which I think is a very fair question that lots of people ask me. Why a skincare brand and why loneliness and why that topic? And essentially how it started is that a few years ago, we had a very fair look at our brand positioning and we've reshaped the brand positioning. And as part of that, we also had the opportunity to have a really frank look at our social impact around the world and what we really wanted to stand for as a brand. And again, there it comes into play saying, well, you're a skincare brand, so you should automatically do something related to what your products are. And we decided not to do that. We decided to actually base it on the values of our brand. And Nivea, as a very old heritage brand that I feel like everyone has seen, has at their house, is really universal and all across the world, is a brand that's based on values of togetherness and a feeling of the collective being bigger than the I, especially in the beauty care industry, which often can be very much about the individual and not about the collective. And so we had a look at these values and say, well, this is what Nivea stands for. And then we said, well, looking at the big societal challenges that the world are facing, what could be one that actually fits to where we can play a role? And what we had a look at is to find something that is as universal as Nivea and that doesn't discriminate by age or gender, that doesn't discriminate by socioeconomic background, being a product that is available all across the world and for everyone. And that's where we came across the topic of social isolation and loneliness, because it is everywhere and is affecting everyone. And so we kind of had this moment where we noticed, oh, these two actually fit very well together, what we want to stand for. And we see this big societal challenge. And then a last thing that really, I think, made like the point that we really felt so passionate about it is that we feel like it is still being overlooked. It is still being under-researched. It's still being under-communicated. So we felt like that was a space we really can play a role and add value as a brand.
Super interesting. So we have two different flying angles here. One, the kind of corporate purpose that Angela shared, and then a little bit the, let's say, brand value beyond the core product attributes that triggered, this two journeys of exploring the issue and thinking through what can be done. So Angela, what was done or what is being done? Like maybe you could walk us through a couple of examples of how this unfolds in, real action.
Absolutely. So a couple of areas. So let's start off with, to your point, the corporate purpose, because Mars is made up of three business segments: pet care, food, and snack. And so while we have the common purpose that all of our associates we expect to really, aspire to and drive, each segment then also has its own purpose. Now they have to be aligned, right? Because if they're not, then there's going to be dissonance and people are going to look and say, well, wait a minute, how does this tie in? So if I go back to, Mars Pet Care was probably our first one that we've done the most amount of work with actually EOM, which was, we want to create a better world for pets. And if we create a better world for pets, we create a better world for human beings. And we've done a lot of studies there in terms of showing that if you are a pet parent, pets can enhance you both from a mental, emotional perspective, even a physical perspective. The whole aspect of, when you're petting your dog, studies have shown that, if your blood pressure, like it'll bring it down, right? So there's been a lot of work there, which again gives people a great sense of purpose that we're doing something that's really impacting not only the dog or the cat, but actually human beings. On the food side, it's all about bringing people together to the dinner table. So yes, we sell our products, Ben's Original, it's rice, microwavable meals that can be done quite quickly, in under 90 seconds, you get your pouch. but it is more around how do we bring people together to the dinner table? Because what we were finding is that nobody was talking to each other at dinner because everybody was having dinner at different times. You know, you had a soccer game going on, so you would go and have something with your child, and then your husband would be later on, or your wife was later on. So the whole purpose with food is really creating occasions where it can bring people together, and it's really focusing on that dinner table aspect. And then for Mars snacking, it's gone through quite a bit of renovation as well in terms of its purpose, because again, you know, there's lots of commentary about snacking and so forth. And what we want to do is really to highlight that actually snacking is an occasion that can bring people together, and it brings some moments of joy and smiles. I mean, one story I have is that you know, someone from work told me that when they went on a plane and gave the flight attendants a bag of M&Ms. And the flight attendant actually at the end of the flight came back and said, you know, it was great during our break. We all got together and had some M&Ms, right? And so again, you go from the segment purpose now to the brand purpose, right? The M&M's brand, the archetype of that brand is all around social occasions. It's sharing. I mean, most of our formats are created in a way that you know, you're not going to eat a pound of M&Ms by yourself. It's the pound of M&Ms or the you know, the kilo of M&Ms, because that's a lot of M&Ms. It's about bringing people together and to enjoy. And you look even at Skittles, for example, that's another brand, and that's making it okay to be quirky. And saying that, you know, you're okay. Have you know, share in Skittles and it's great. Malteser's brand is actually addressing mental health. And there's been some great adverts in the UK, especially around some of the challenges that women have, you know, post-pregnancy and how they're feeling and so forth. And so the significance here that I'm trying to highlight is you have to have these all kind of like a nesting doll. They've all got to be aligned, because if not, then you're going to have people in the business wondering what's going on, and you're going to have your consumer as well as your third party partners looking at this and going, are you really living your principle? And it's so important for us to show that authenticity. The other area, if I may, I know, am I going too long, Pascal?
Go for it. I think it's really interesting, and it is this nesting doll example that you describe of kind of, you know, the corporate purpose, segment purpose, and then, you know, the kind of like brand purpose. I think it's quite powerful for the, you know, audience to see how this all fits together.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe concluding remarks on those examples from you.
Yeah, my only concluding remark is that then all this, you've got to also demonstrate that with your associates internally. Are you then walking the talk? And as an example, post-COVID, we ended up where we did grassroots. We actually asked our associates, what do you need? And as a result, we now have over 100, I'll call it employee resource groups. You know, mothers at Mars, mothers that have like autistic children at Mars, right? So whatever the associate wants, they get a little budget. So we have like a $20,000 budget that's given to somebody to start. It could be as small as 5 people. It could be as large as 100 people, right? And it's all been grassroots, and it's wonderful because it shows you it doesn't have to come from the top. Actually, sometimes I think the top just needs to listen to the bottom. And they did, and they created this great movement of really people being able to share what's common with them and working it through, and it's great.
Yeah, thanks so much, Angela. Madeline, Nivea is also quite serious about taking action. Maybe you could also share a couple of examples of how that initial spark, you know, makes a real world change all around the world.
Sure. First of all, I'm always like, as soon as I listen to Angela, I'm like, I think we should do this as well. I get very inspired, like taking notes. So I think that's the beauty of the topic. I think everyone is learning from one another and saying, oh, we should think about this topic as well. So essentially what we did at Nivea is we have launched a social mission that is called Nivea Connect. It's a very intuitive name, I think. And Nivea Connect is our global social mission. And what that means is that it is the commitment both externally towards the outside world as well as internally towards our employees around what we as a brand really want to stand for when it comes to our social impact. And trying to explain how Nivea Connect is set up and try to summarize it in 3 different pillars that we're working in to simplify it. One of the core pillars, and the first one, and that's, I think, the heart and soul of everything that we do, is that all of the Nivea countries across the world has a local social project that is fighting social isolation on the ground. And I can speak about it in a second as well, on how that looks like. But essentially every country where Nivea is present, and that's lots, and we've committed to have 40 by 2026, is fighting isolation in their local region. So this is the heart and soul of the commitment, because we're actually taking action and each country is doing so. What we're also doing in our second pillar is all around research and engaging with experts. And I mean, I have the opportunity to have Pamela here on the panel today. We're also working with Julianne Holt-Lundstad, who is a professor and an expert in the field of social connection. And we've also engaged in massive research ourselves. I think we've just launched something yesterday, trying to add to the understanding of the topic. Because as brands, we can use our resources. We also have market research departments. And we're trying to create these and leverage the skills that we have internally to contribute to a topic such as loneliness, and really add insights and understanding to it. So that's the second pillar. And the third and final pillar is all around communication. And I think that's something that also is such an undertapped asset of brands, especially if we're large consumer good brands. And I think it was fairly said by Nick in the very beginning, we are part of households and we are seen in TV commercials. We have products that are touching hands of people every day. And so we have the opportunity to communicate on topics. And that's also what we're trying to do as Nivea, is try to use the voices that we have. We're about to launch a comms campaign in July, trying to raise awareness for the topic. It's trying to make loneliness and isolation less of this daunting negative topic that we don't dare to speak about as brands. The more we do it, the less daunting it will get. And the more we educate people, the easier it will be for people to ask for help and to get help and to offer help to others. And so this is the 3 pillars of how Nivea Connect is set up and how we're trying to make a positive impact.
Super, super interesting. Maybe just like for the benefit of the audience, would you mind sharing 1 or 2 examples for that first pillar, those country-specific actions? Because I feel so interesting how you tailor it to the various contexts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you said rightfully tailored, because we are aware that loneliness and isolation look very different across the world, and it's very nuanced. It's very hard to put a finger on it, and it will express itself differently in countries such as Indonesia, and it will look different in Sweden or North America. So we really had to find a way in which the countries can choose and pick projects that fit their local needs. So we set out a global guideline, and every country needs to ensure that they're sticking to the rules and that the project actually fights isolation. So we're checking boxes globally and ensuring that the countries are supporting right projects. And then how that looks like, for example, is that in the UK, we have a project partnership with the NSPCC, which is the children's online support hotline, where children can dial in and get support. And within that project, we've actually set up a little initiative that is specifically looking at children that call in and they notice, oh, that child might actually be suffering from isolation and loneliness. And they're trying to get these children into a 12-week program and help them build up skills, get more empathetic towards themselves, get more resilient, and help them get out of isolation. So that's one of the examples. And then maybe another one from the other side of the world is in South Africa. We have a rural community center in the middle of nowhere, in a community where there is barely access to anything. And they've built a community center to support the community after school. Started with children and realized, oh, now we're having parents come in and we have grandparents come in. And so you can see this is something that works really well in South Africa because it's tailored to their needs. And you have something that is digitally connected, very focused on social media in the UK, focusing on Gen Z, because it gives us the opportunity to really use projects that have an impact. And that's how every country across the globe around Nivea has like a bouquet of projects that we're seeing being supported.
If I may, Pascal, I really want to commend you, Madeline, on that, because there's such a negative connotation around social these days, right? But what you've shown is you could actually take social and then take it down to the local level and make it physical. So it's an and as opposed to has to be an either or.
Absolutely, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, thanks. Quite inspiring also your place-based approach there, Madeline. Professor Qualter, Pam, when you're listening to these like two leaders from the business world, are there any specific points that you would like to highlight? What we can learn from them, like where we would say, all right, this is like a nice spark I would like to see in other companies. Maybe you could provide a bit of context there.
Yeah, I mean, I want to probably start off by saying, they are real trailblazers. What they're doing is really exciting. If I wasn't doing this and I was an audience member, I would be excited and want to do something. What I also love is this notion of context that Madeline talked about. Often we're quite scared and feel we have to do the same thing in different places. And it's really nice to think that there are different projects being done across the world. And for me, who I'm in my research, I do a lot of co-production with young people. Their voice is so important. What you're doing is making sure that those people in the communities in which you're doing interventions are actually being listened to and co-producing with you. And that is really exciting. But even if we take smaller companies that may not be able to do it on such a grand scale, I think what you do is you offer inspiration. You're doing something in this space that's never been done before. And that is simply exciting. And you can start incredibly small. So for me, that's what's exciting about listening to you and I would recommend to anybody who's listening in on the call that wants to get started, I would just say get started. And that's the thing to take away, I think, from people. Think about your local context, certainly, but don't be scared about getting started.
Oh, this is beautiful. And I remember, Pam, when we were sitting together in Manchester and we're talking about like what success means like for you. And we actually said, no, it's not like a published report or, media attention or whatever, but the change that is actually happening in the world, like the businesses that start to act. And yeah, thanks for that drive and energy you all bring to the table. Already a few questions came in from the audience, and we want to pick them up, but I also invite other members in the audience who have not yet shared their questions, just to type in what's on your mind, where we would like to learn more from these like global leaders we have here in the room. One question that came in is from Rajana Anthony, who I believe, Angela, you met in Hyderabad when you were visiting the Tata Consultancy Services team. She asks how HR can elevate loneliness from a wellness concern to a health care risk. So I guess how to create a sense of urgency through the HR function. And then how can the HR function also specifically act as a strategic partner, I guess, to general management and taking action on the issue?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I would say, and first of all, hello, and great to have you on the webinar. In terms of the HR function, maybe the example I'll give you is actually what happened within our Mars Global Services, right? So it's a shared service. A lot of people see it as a back office. And when I took this role on back in 2017, we had very low engagement rates. So we did a Gallup survey, and what we found, we were quite low. We had very low energy levels, and actually with the HR partner that I had with me, we took a look and said, how do we change the game here? And to the point, at times you got to make it, unfortunately, in dollars and cents, right? You have to add the economic side of it. And so we started highlighting the number of days off that people were taking, sick leaves and so forth, and said, what if we even change this by an improvement of 20%? And we were able to show then that this is a major concern, and getting the investments that we needed from my boss actually to say let's do something here different. And we conducted listening tours. So we went around and actually just said, let's just listen. That's why God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? We need to listen, and just finding out what were some of the challenges, and some of it were like simple things that, again, go forth and do it. You don't need permission, right? And others were systemic and laid a lot in terms of how we were organizing ourselves. The part about place, right? So it led to actually a lot of office layout, more collaborative spaces, more also spaces to be alone, but it was okay because they were really nice plush couches with a little bit of privacy and so forth. So that happened. And I think the other part that happened is, again, we brought all the teams together and said, you're doing something more than just transactions. You're making it easier for the rest of the associates in the organizations to be able to do their job. And it was unbelievable what a turnaround that was, from basically saying, I'm an accounts payable clerk and I'm just processing, to actually, how can I create a better experience for the associate who now has to go and search, did the supplier get paid? So those are just some of the examples, but it was very much translating first into hard dollars and cents, and then listening, and then empowering and implementing.
Thanks for I can almost see the kind of like strategy slide here in front of you, Angela, from the thinking to the empowerment in the end. Thanks for sharing this in such a succinct way on how you took action there to really leverage the role of the HR function in a strategic way. One question, and I would actually like to kind of like pose this to everyone here, to each of you, starting with you, Pam, that we always like to ask in our ethnographic research interview is, if you had a magic wand, what would you change in the system? So starting with you, Pam, let's say you had that magic wand, what would you do?
Honestly, as somebody who's been researching in this field for 30 plus years now, what I would do, my ideal for changing the world and eradicating loneliness or getting stuck in loneliness, would be, let's eradicate poverty. Poverty is our biggest predictor of loneliness, as is marginalization, actually. Those are the two things that I would get rid of. Now, I don't have a magic wand. The world doesn't enable me to get rid of those things. So what's my next option? Well, probably to simply have initiatives like these, where there are voices that are coming together to try and make a difference. So what I would like is, ideally, people having access to communities, being able to talk about their experiences of loneliness without feeling any prejudice, and being able to, access support, friendships, those weak ties, people getting on. So I suppose actually, in essence, I'd like the world to be more kind, and I think that we can offer an awful lot by working together.
Quite powerful words, to have the world a little bit kinder. Angela, beyond the capabilities of the Kind brand, which is of course also within the Mars portfolio, how would you use your magic wand to take action here?
My magic wand. So for me, the magic wand would be the fact that, first of all, businesses see themselves as communities of people, that it's through the collective intelligence of those people that they can actually be a force for good. It seems that if you don't say, oh, it's all about maximizing shareholder wealth, you're seen as somebody odd, as opposed to actually, if you focus on the impact that businesses can have in the community and address these social problems, right? So you talk, Pamela, about poverty, right? where businesses go into these communities, like Madeline, you've mentioned, right, going into Africa, you see change can happen. And so I think it's just the fact that businesses do have a responsibility, not just to maximize shareholder profit. I think if you do only that, we will actually go into a world of scarcity versus if we want to be into a world of abundance. The world of abundance has to have that responsibility that businesses need to make, which is on the human capital, right? So raising the capital of humans, especially now with AI coming, that's going to be a big question. The social capital piece of it, having community, because we're social beings, right? We need community. And then the impact that we make on this earth and ensuring that we take care of it because it's pretty precious and we have, future generations to think about. And there are, it's interesting. My last comment to you would be like some of the native tribes here in America where they will make decisions based on what's the impact of 7 generations from now. Now I don't know about you, but I don't think a lot of people think about the decision I'm going to make today. What's it going to impact 7 generations from now?
That's a beautiful metaphor. And of course, both Beiersdorf and Mars, and of course, different kind of legal setups have both strong families in the background. So, Madeline, how would you deploy your magic wand here?
I think at first I take what was said before in my magic wand and include that and make it even more powerful. But I think for me, one of the things I would wish for is all around removing the stigma around the conversation. And sometimes it feels like there is this veil that sits upon the topic. And I mean, knowing that we're in a webinar with people, we know statistically that people in this room are feeling isolated and lonely. And why is it so hard to talk about the fact that we are lonely? Why is it? I sometimes struggle with it and I work on it every day. And I find it so hard to admit that I am. And I really want to just take that away from people. And I think my magic wand would be trying to lift that and make it part of conversations, demystify the word, make it part of conversations without people thinking it's a heavy, hard-hitting topic. We are humans. We share this world. We are meant to be in this world together. And if we're lacking the connections that we have, then it shouldn't be a shame to talk about it. And equally, from the perspective of brands, it's not a topic that we should not dare to talk about, neither externally nor internally. It's to this question around HR. I think it should be as part of HR conversations. It should be part of conversations with your manager. It should be part of conversations in the office. And it starts really everywhere. And if we start doing that more, I think the stigma would disappear. I would love to take it off the world immediately. And then I think we would all have more blunt conversations with one another. But I think that's the big role we can play. And I think that's the magic wand I'd love to see more action in.
Thanks. This is so beautiful, and thanks also for sharing this in this really authentic way to all 3 of you. And Madeline, what really stuck from our conversations in London was this notion that now that you're having this role, actually from various parts of the company, Singer associates would come to you to approach you as a kind of confident when it comes to their like personal issues. And of course, that's not part of your job description, but just like by elevating this theme, creating an authentic, space to talk about it is something that really, I found quite powerful personally. There are still a couple of questions in the chat. We will not have the time to go through them. We'll make sure to follow up, and I'm sure that the panelists will volunteer a couple of minutes of their time to also input on those. I just want to really say a heartfelt thank you for sharing this kind of spark here today with the audience. I personally really learn every time we have these conversations something new. It was great to see the different angles. What really stuck me, Angela, this nesting doll example of how you really strategically ladder it up or ladder it down, however you want to framework, so everyone is aligned. And then your example that you provided talking about the strategic, way to steer HR, actually leading all the way the nesting doll to frontline worker empowerment. I think like sharing how the big picture actually then triggers real alignment in a powerful way is just beautiful. And then Madeline, your place-based approach, rolling out a global framework against all odds and a behemoth such as Bayersdorf, and then triggering real world action 3 years later all around the world. That's also quite impressive and inspiring. And the kind of like work is also public. There is a really nice kind of landing page that Bayersdorf has in place, providing details on that strategic framework. Thanks also to you, Pam, for putting things into context, and as always, being our kind of scientific North Star grounding us here. Thanks, everyone. And I think Nick has a couple of last concluding words from our side. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd just like to echo what Pascal said. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. And I want to thank our speakers for sharing their insight, experience, and vision with us. What we've heard throughout the discussion is that loneliness is not just a personal or public issue, it's a systems issue. And that means business, especially consumer-facing business, has a powerful role to play. We've seen that loneliness is more than the absence of close relationships. It's about the absence of belonging, of everyday interaction, of feeling part of something larger than yourself. And that's exactly where consumer goods companies, through their brands, their spaces, their cultures, their influence, can make a real difference. Whether it's through product experience, workplace design, marketing strategy, or community partnerships, the tools are already there. So here's our call to action. If today has sparked something for you, an idea, a question, a sense of responsibility, we'd love to explore it with you. You will have an email in your inbox from me when you signed up for this webinar. Just reply to that and we can set up a conversation. We're here to support you as the Economics of Mutuality Alliance with insight, practical tools, and connection to a cross-sector network that can help you move from awareness to scalable and measurable action. We see this initiative as the start of something much bigger that everyone is invited to, and we'd love for you to be part of shaping that. Thank you.